Today was a momentous occasion, the engagement day of Lady Ramira. The atmosphere was filled with excitement and anticipation. The Duchess, sensing something amiss, approached Rihanna and inquired if she was feeling unwell. It had been 9 long years since our female protagonist, Rihanna, had been living this life, having adapted to her new identity. Now, at the age of 16, she had grown into a young woman. During this not-so-short period, one persistent problem remained unresolved. It was now time to address this issue head-on. The problem stemmed from the Duke's steadfast refusal to allow Rihanna to get engaged at a young age. He had argued that discussing engagements at an age when one should be playing freely was nonsensical. Consequently, 9 years had passed, and now it was challenging to find a girl of similar age who wasn't already engaged. Rihanna's concern grew as she worried that Heath might tire of waiting and cancel the contract. This thought caused Rihanna considerable anxiety. The Duchess, noticing Rihanna's tense demeanor, asked if her unease was related to Countess Ramira's daughter, who had a habit of picking on Rihanna at every social gathering. The Duchess's anger flared up as she remembered the countless times Ramira had tormented Rihanna. She told Rihanna firmly that if Ramira dared to do something like that again, she should feel free to stand up for herself. Rihanna, trying to calm the Duchess, assured her that she would handle it. In response, the Duchess gave Rihanna the freedom to retaliate if necessary, even suggesting that a little physical reprimand would be acceptable, and that they would take responsibility for any consequences. Rihanna glanced at Killian and informed him that she would be back soon. Killian, who had always been by Rihanna's side, had suddenly matured significantly, no longer resembling the male protagonist he once was. He now exhibited a politeness and kindness that were quite unexpected. Rihanna often found herself missing the chubby-cheeked, short-tongued child who used to throw tantrums. Meanwhile, a group of ladies had gathered around, congratulating Lady Ramira on her engagement. Manhwa joined the group, adding her congratulations to the mix. Lady Ramira, noticing Rihanna, couldn't resist asking if there was still no good news about her engagement. The annoying daughter of Countess Ramira had been a thorn in Rihanna's side for 9 long years, constantly harassing her. Rihanna pondered whether she should finally take the Duchess's advice and confront her tormentor. Deciding to take action, Rihanna used her acquired noble status to launch a verbal attack on Ramira, having learned a few tricks from the noble brats she had observed. Lady Ramira's eyes caught sight of a bracelet on Rihanna's wrist. She immediately commented on its extravagant flashiness, criticizing Rihanna for wearing something so opulent at Ramira's engagement ceremony. Ramira felt that since it was her special day, Rihanna shouldn't be wearing anything that might outshine her. Rihanna, realizing the faux pas, apologized and asked if there was a place where she could leave the bracelet temporarily until the ceremony concluded. Lady Ramira, seizing the opportunity, offered to keep the bracelet for her, assuring Rihanna that she would store it safely in her waiting room. With a sly smile, Ramira put on the bracelet and admired herself in the mirror, thinking it suited her much better than it did Rihanna. Ramira, who had once dreamt of being an honor-crowned princess, or a duchess, had seen her ambitions thwarted by her malicious and unrefined nature. She blamed others for her failures, and Rihanna had become her primary target during those years. As Ramira was engrossed in admiring the jewelry on her wrist, a voice from behind startled her. "It really suits you," the voice said. It was Killian. He approached Ramira and asked to see her hand. With a charming smile, Killian complimented the jewelry, saying it suited her even more than he had imagined. Ramira was taken aback that Killian had spoken to her. Killian gently took her hand in his, making her heart race. He then expressed regret upon hearing the news of her engagement, a sentiment that left Ramira in shock. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was as if her cherished dream had come true. Ramira, her voice trembling with emotion, asked Killian why he was telling her this now, revealing that she had admired him for a long time. Ramira, despite her engagement, hinted that if Killian could wait just a bit longer, they might still have a chance. Killian, maintaining his composure, advised Ramira to calm down and suggested that she show everyone their token of love today. He instructed her to wear the bracelet throughout the engagement ceremony. After a while, Killian returned to the palace and stood near Rihanna and Esmeralda. Rihanna noticed that Killian's face looked pale and asked if he was feeling okay. As she observed him, she couldn't help but marvel at how much they had both grown. She found herself wondering how Killian had become so handsome and realized that it wouldn't be long before he fully embraced his role as the male lead of the original story. Later, Ramira stood on the stage, ready to make an announcement. She began by thanking all the guests for joining them on their joyous day. She spoke eloquently about the celebration of their blossoming love, emphasizing that although it was just the beginning, their love would grow stronger and more enduring than anything else. Throughout her speech, Ramira's gaze kept drifting towards Killian, who was standing beside Rihanna. Riene, puzzled, wondered why Ramira kept looking their way and why she was wearing her bracelet. She also noted the insincerity in Ramira's speech, a sentiment that seemed to be shared by Ramira's fiancé, who looked equally bewildered. As the ceremony progressed, Ramira and her fiancé moved to light a candle together. Her fiancé cautioned her to be careful. Suddenly, the flame flared up unexpectedly, heading straight for Ramira's bracelet. As the fire blazed and the flames danced menacingly, panic spread like wildfire among the gathered people. The atmosphere quickly became chaotic as screams and shouts filled the air, creating a cacophony of fear and confusion. Ramira's voice was particularly strident as she called out frantically for help, her eyes wide with terror. Amidst the pandemonium, Rihanna took swift and decisive action. She quickly grabbed a glass of water and, with a steady hand, splashed it onto Ramira. The water hit the flames, and with a hiss, the fire was extinguished. Ramira, now drenched and visibly furious, turned her angry gaze toward Rihanna. Her face was contorted with rage as she began to hurl accusations at Rihanna, claiming that she had orchestrated the entire incident. Ramira insisted that Rihanna had tampered with the bracelet to make it catch fire. Esmeralda, who had been observing the scene intently, noticed that Ramira was wearing Rihanna's bracelet. This revelation piqued her curiosity and suspicion. Esmeralda, seizing the moment, asked Ramira in front of the gathered crowd about the bracelet. The crowd, already on edge, began to murmur and gossip among themselves, their whispers growing louder as speculation spread. Rihanna, maintaining her composure despite the chaotic scene, addressed Ramira calmly. She reminded Ramira that she had given her the bracelet for safekeeping, as Ramira had previously mentioned that it was too gorgeous to wear at an engagement ceremony. Rihanna's words were measured and deliberate, aimed at diffusing the tension. In her defense, Ramira turned to the crowd, her voice rising as she exclaimed that they didn't know the full story. She then turned towards Killian, her eyes pleading for him to support her. Killian, however, remained stoic and unmoved. With a straight face, he stated that he had no idea what Ramira was talking about. Shock washed over Ramira as she stood there, unable to comprehend the betrayal. Esmeralda took the opportunity to clarify the situation further. She announced to everyone that it was Ramira who had asked for the bracelet from Rihanna. Now, Ramira was wearing it proudly without any sense of shame. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, and judgmental glances were cast in Ramira's direction. Ramira, feeling the weight of the crowd's judgment, realized she had been duped by Killian into believing he loved her, and that he had orchestrated the entire situation. Her mind raced as she processed the betrayal and the public humiliation she was enduring. As Ramira began to leave, her head held low, Rihanna couldn't help but reflect on the nature of the nobility. She thought about how nobles struggled to adapt to a society where only self-interest and power mattered. The people standing around continued to murmur, saying how embarrassing it must be for Ramira to walk around after such a scene. Some even questioned her upbringing by the Countess, their words cutting through the air like daggers. Rihanna, observing the reactions, thought once again about the fickle nature of the nobility. They might pretend to be friendly and smile, but they could turn their backs on you in an instant. It was a society where yesterday's allies could become today's enemies. This was a fact she had always known, but it was nonetheless exhausting. Despite everything, Rihanna didn't hold any grudges against Lady Ramira. She picked up the bracelet and examined it closely, still worried about Ramira and wondering if she could just stop and reflect on her actions. Killian, observing Rihanna from a distance, sensed that she was blaming herself for the situation. He approached her gently and suggested that they should leave the scene. That night, as Killian and Rihanna walked outside the palace, the moon shone brightly in the sky, casting a serene glow over the landscape. Rihanna took a moment to thank Killian for his support and help today. Killian responded with a warm smile, saying that as family, it was only natural to support each other. Rihanna noticed a distinct change in Killian's attitude towards her. He treated her with more politeness and maturity than before, a marked difference from his previous demeanor. He no longer wore his emotions on his sleeve as he had when he was younger. Curious about the day's events, Rihanna asked Killian how he had managed to make Lady Ramira wear her bracelet. Killian admitted that it had been quite challenging for him as well. He confessed that he wasn't very good at lying and asked Rihanna for some praise, as today had been particularly tough and exhausting. Rihanna looked at Killian with a mix of affection and amusement, thinking that, despite everything, he still seemed like a kid sometimes. She placed her hand gently on Killian's head and suggested they go home and enjoy some delicious food together. Together, they walked back into the palace, their footsteps echoing softly in the night. Later, Rihanna found herself lost in thought. She was clearly disturbed by something that weighed heavily on her mind. She sat down at her desk and began to write a letter. In the letter, she mentioned that she was doing well and would soon talk to the Duke about their engagement again. This letter was addressed to Heath, a person with whom she had promised an engagement years ago. The process of writing the letter left Rihanna feeling completely exhausted. She realized that there wasn't much time left until the start of the original novel. She took a moment to reflect on how everyone around her was getting engaged, yet she was the only one who hadn't, especially as things were gradually becoming more complicated with Killian. The lack of progress in her independence plan frustrated her immensely. As she felt the weight of her worries, she decided to go for a walk to clear her mind. She left her room quietly, not realizing that Killian had been standing behind her, watching her intently. Once she was gone, Killian entered the room, saw the letter, and seemed to have anticipated its presence. He thought about the ever-present promise of engagement, but as someone determined to overcome all opposition and hardships, a letter from a lover felt extremely dry and impersonal. Killian left the room and stood near the balcony, observing Rihanna as she wandered outside the palace. He noted that his sister's insomnia seemed to be getting worse with each passing day. He consoled himself by thinking that it was just an engagement, and he could break it off at any time if necessary. Rihanna eventually returned from her walk, feeling refreshed and ready to sleep. But when she opened the door, she found Killian standing there, waiting for her. His expression filled with unease. Killian, looking vulnerable, confessed to her that he couldn't sleep and asked if she could help put him to sleep. Rihanna, caught off guard, was initially shocked and asked him again to clarify if he was really asking her to help him sleep. Killian, maintaining his sincerity, reminded her that she too had been struggling with sleepless nights lately and offered to help put her to sleep as well. Rihanna, flustered, shouted at him, questioning how he could make such a request and bringing up his age to emphasize her point. Killian, trying to ease the tension, told her that he had a frightening nightmare that scared him deeply. He then made a cute, pleading face and asked his sister if she was going to coldly reject her only younger brother in such a manner. Rihanna thought to herself that his adorable tactics wouldn't work on her forever, yet Killian added earnestly that since they were family, they should support each other, especially during times like these. After some time, it seemed like Rihanna couldn't resist Killian's persistence, and they ended up lying in beds next to each other. As they settled down, Rihanna reflected that, in the end, she had lost the argument once again. She mentally retracted her earlier thoughts that Killian had matured significantly. After a few minutes of silence, Killian broke the quiet, asking Rihanna if she was still troubled about not being engaged yet and if that was contributing to her sleeplessness. Rihanna admitted that, as everyone else around her was getting engaged, it did bother her a bit that her engagement had been postponed. Rihanna was taken aback because Killian had always been very sensitive about the topic of engagement, yet here he was, bringing it up himself. Killian then asked Rihanna if he could do something to help her with this issue, prompting Rihanna to turn towards him with a mix of surprise and curiosity. Killian suggested that he could talk to their father about it. Rihanna stood up, hardly able to believe what she was hearing. She knew that if Killian spoke to the Duke, he might indeed permit the engagement. Rihanna told Killian that his help would be great for her, but she questioned his sudden willingness to assist. Killian revealed that there was something he wanted her to do in return. When Rihanna asked what he needed, Killian replied that once she became an adult, she should leave the dukedom. Rihanna was deeply shocked, a wave of emotions hitting her. She had a flashback of all the time she had spent in the mansion with everyone, especially Killian. Rihanna thought that she had been planning to leave anyway and was destined to die, so being kicked out didn't seem like such a big deal. She agreed with Killian, promising to leave the dukedom when she reached adulthood. Killian, satisfied, said that it was a deal now and returned to his side of the bed. He asked Rihanna, with a hint of sadness, if that meant they wouldn't be family anymore when the time came. At this point, Rihanna had tears in her eyes. She couldn't understand why she was crying since everything was going according to her plan, yet the sadness was overwhelming. After a while, she found herself standing next to the Duke, who agreed to her engagement, acknowledging that she had turned 16 this year. Rihanna was overjoyed. The Duke reminisced, saying it felt like just yesterday when they had brought her to him, back when she was only up to his knees. He also told Rihanna that regardless of her engagement or marriage, if she ever wanted to return, she should let him know, as there would always be a place for her in the dukedom. Rihanna thanked the Duke wholeheartedly for everything. A few days later, it was finally the day of Rihanna's engagement. Esmeralda arrived and congratulated Rihanna warmly. Esmeralda expressed her relief, acknowledging that Rihanna had been through a lot, but now things seemed to be looking up. Esmeralda's mother also came and offered her congratulations. The Marchioness commented that she had been thinking for a while, and believed that the princess and the prince made a wonderful match. She also hoped that Esmeralda would soon meet a good person. Rihanna reassured them that she would definitely meet a wonderful man who would surpass anyone else. Rihanna knew in her heart that the male lead of the novel would be her husband. As she thought about Killian, she realized she hadn't seen him for several days. She didn't expect Killian to miss her engagement ceremony, yet here she was, feeling his absence keenly. The Marchioness also inquired about Killian, noting that he must be very upset to miss his only sister's engagement ceremony, and it must be disappointing for him not to attend. Rihanna explained that Killian was busy these days but remembered his words about not being family anymore after she left. Rihanna pondered if Killian no longer saw her as his older sister. Rihanna and Heath stood next to each other, and Heath reassured her that he would do his best for her and asked her to trust him. Rihanna thanked him sincerely, acknowledging that he had already done so much for her. She thought that thanks to this engagement, the issue of her independence was resolved at once. Now, she just needed to fulfill her role as the fiancé. Everything seemed to be going very smoothly. Heath noticed that Rihanna appeared as if she was about to cry and asked her if she was all right. Rihanna responded that she was just very happy to finally be getting engaged. After the engagement, Rihanna realized she had no recollection of what dress she wore, what food she ate, or what gifts she received. After some time, Heath was escorted to his room by a servant. The servant, who had come to drop him off, politely told him to enjoy his stay and make himself comfortable. Heath thanked the servant and, as soon as the door closed behind him, he took a moment to look around the room. It was elegantly furnished and quite spacious. Just as he was starting to feel at ease, he noticed someone standing beside him. To his surprise, it was none other than Killian Estira. Killian greeted Heath with a friendly smile, but Heath was immediately taken aback and asked him, with a hint of suspicion, what he was doing in this room without anyone's permission. Killian, seemingly uninterested in addressing Heath's concern, ignored the question and instead remarked that Heath had gotten a pretty good room. He hoped Heath was satisfied with it. Heath, not content with this evasive response, pressed further and asked Killian what he really wanted to say. Killian then brought up the topic of Heath's engagement with his sister, Rihanna. He expressed his curiosity about whether Heath intended to use her for political purposes. Killian, who clearly did not believe in the concept of love at first sight, reminded Heath that he had first met Rihanna 9 years ago at Gunkyukai. Killian continued to press Heath, asking how many times he had met Rihanna since that initial encounter. He claimed that what Heath was feeling couldn't possibly be love, and that the notion was completely ridiculous. Heath, trying to defend himself, explained to Killian that he had indeed made contact with Rihanna. But things were different now. He insisted that he was more loyal to Rihanna than anyone else. He assured Killian that he had been sincere from the very beginning and explained that, regardless of what had happened, Rihanna was now officially registered as his wife. He added that since Rihanna had not given up on him, he had made the decision not to give up on her either. As Heath was preparing to leave the room, Killian, with a peculiar and somewhat unsettling smile on his face, asked Heath what he should do now. Meanwhile, in her own room, Rihanna was feeling very frustrated. She was deeply upset that Killian hadn't attended his only sister's engagement. She couldn't quite understand why she was feeling so distressed over someone else's absence. Reflecting on her emotions, she realized that it was because she was his only sister, and that was why she felt so upset. Trying to shake off these thoughts, she decided not to dwell on it, but the feeling lingered, making her even more upset. Suddenly, Killian appeared in her room, startling her with his sudden entrance. Rihanna, looking at him in surprise, was shocked by his sudden appearance. Killian quickly apologized for not being able to attend the engagement. Rihanna, still angry, told him that his absence had actually made it a perfect engagement, and that it had been such a perfect and fun day without him. She then told Killian that she was tired and wanted to sleep, asking him to leave. Killian, however, had come prepared with a gift to apologize for his absence. To make it more appealing, he mentioned that he had prepared it with shiny things, knowing how much she liked them. Rihanna's mood suddenly changed, and she decided to accept the gift for the sake of his sincerity. After agreeing to accept his gift, Killian moved closer to Rihanna and, gently but firmly, grabbed her by the waist. In an instant, they found themselves standing in a completely different place. It was a beautiful pond, shimmering brightly under the night sky. Although it was different from the sparkly things Rihanna usually liked, it was undeniably beautiful and enchanting. Rihanna couldn't help but praise Killian for his thoughtful choice. Killian then admitted that he wasn't truly sorry for not attending her engagement. His only regret was that he hadn't had the chance to dance with her, so he asked if they could dance now. Rihanna, feeling a mix of emotions, gave him permission, and they started dancing together. As they danced, Rihanna found it hard to believe that her brother, who was so sweet and cute to her, was destined to become the cruel Killian from the original novel. While they were dancing, Killian asked Rihanna if he had given her a hard time when they were young. She joked that he hadn't troubled her even a bit, but then admitted that he had caused her a lot of trouble, although he was pretty cute. Killian then asked if she still found him cute. Rihanna, deep in thought, recalled that in the original story, Killian was going to become a sociopath who killed people and overthrew the Duke and Duchess. However, while they were having this lovely conversation, she wondered if the story had changed since she had been possessed. She pondered if her presence had made Killian change, even just a little. But soon, her optimistic thoughts came to an abrupt end when Killian asked her to keep the promise of being independent. The following day, outside the grand palace of the Duke, a significant number of people and servants had gathered. Several carriages stood lined up, their presence indicating the importance of the day. Eliza, who was Rihanna's personal maid, approached her with a concerned expression and informed her that they would require at least 2 more carriages to transport everything they needed. Rihanna and Eliza were preparing to leave for the academy. Eliza, deeply concerned for Rihanna's well-being, wanted to ensure that she was comfortable and well prepared for her new life at the academy. Rihanna, however, was doing her best to dissuade Eliza from bringing too many things from the household. The Duke and Duchess observed from a distance, satisfied with their choice of maid, and the Duchess decided that Eliza deserved a raise for her dedication. The Duke and Duchess were anxious about Rihanna's transition to the academy and expressed their concerns. They asked Rihanna if she was certain she wanted to pursue an aristocratic education, suggesting that children also need time to play and enjoy themselves. Rihanna had anticipated this reaction from them, as they reminded her of a foreign rapper from a past life who used to claim that they had enough money to last until their daughter's death. They intended to raise their daughter to be spoiled and indulged, without the pressures of a demanding education. The Duke and Duchess had similar intentions. They wanted Rihanna to enjoy her life without being burdened by the pressures of rigorous academic demands. Rihanna reassured the Duke and Duchess that she would be fine and that she would return to visit them soon. The Duke, still concerned, told Rihanna that if she was truly insistent on going, she could do so, but he encouraged her to come back if she ever felt bored or lonely. Rihanna took her leave and began her journey to the academy. The Duke asked Rihanna to visit often on weekends and during school holidays, which Rihanna agreed to, before finally leaving the palace. After some time, they arrived at the academy. It was a magnificent institution, with grand architecture and an impressive facade. The students at the academy were abuzz with gossip about Rihanna's enrollment. It was a rare occurrence for a princess to attend their academy, and the students were fascinated and curious. Some students even whispered among themselves, questioning whether a commoner like Rihanna deserved such lavish treatment and whether the number of carriages was excessive for someone of her status. Eliza, who was close by, overheard the gossip and grew increasingly angry. She clenched her fists in frustration, feeling a strong urge to confront the students and defend Rihanna. Fortunately, Rihanna intervened, asking Eliza not to act so impulsively and to avoid childish behavior. Just then, the principal of the academy, Master Grills, made his appearance. He addressed Rihanna with a solemn tone, informing her that he had received more than 20 threatening letters from the Duke over the past 3 months. The letters contained threats of severe consequences if the academy did not treat the princess with the utmost respect and care. The Duke had warned that any slight issue with Rihanna would result in the academy being shut down. Master Grills had taken these warnings seriously and was well prepared for Rihanna's arrival. He assured Rihanna that her dormitory room was a top-of-the-line suite, with furniture crafted by renowned artisans from the East Coast. Additionally, Rihanna's school uniform was made from the finest materials, embroidered in her personal colors. Rihanna was taken aback by the extravagance and felt it was unnecessary, but Eliza agreed to everything on her behalf. She mentioned that, as the Duke's representative, she would take a closer look at the arrangements and report back to the Duke. Rihanna reflected on the situation and realized that these circumstances might cause her to become more wicked than the original Rihanna. This was how her first day at the academy unfolded. Exhausted from the day's events and the constant squabbles between Eliza and the principal, Rihanna lay on her bed, feeling completely worn out. Despite the exhaustion, she quickly fell into a deep and restful sleep. However, her rest was interrupted when she saw Killian sitting next to her. At first, Rihanna could hardly believe her eyes and thought she might be dreaming. But as she fully opened her eyes, she was shocked to see Killian sitting beside her on the bed. Rihanna had not seen Killian since the day of the engagement ceremony, and she asked him where he had been. Killian explained that he had avoided returning home because he feared for his safety if his mother found out he had skipped the engagement. Rihanna was surprised to learn that Killian had been away from home for so long and had essentially been homeless since the engagement. Rihanna urged Killian to return home, as their mother would undoubtedly be worried about him. However, Killian was more fearful of his mother's collection of weapons and was reluctant to go back. He asked Riina if he could stay with her for a while, but Riina, feeling frustrated, told him it was not possible due to the limited space, only one room and one bed. Killian argued that they had shared a bed many times before, but Riina pointed out that things had changed. They were now adults, not children anymore. Killian then decided to find an empty classroom to stay in and left the room. Before departing, he told Riina that he would visit often. Riina was taken aback by how quickly he had understood the situation. Meanwhile, Killian stood outside the room, feeling a sense of embarrassment about the entire situation. Today marked the beginning of Riina's academic journey at the academy, a milestone she approached with a blend of trepidation and eagerness. Killian's firm insistence had propelled her here, and despite her initial reluctance, a part of her was secretly thrilled about what lay ahead. As she entered the classroom, her heart pounded, a mixture of anxiety and excitement swirling within her. To her immense relief, she spotted Esmeralda, who approached her with a radiant smile. Their warm greeting was filled with genuine happiness, and this unexpected reunion immediately lifted Riina's spirits, making the daunting prospect of the academy seem much more bearable. Esmeralda, ever observant, quickly noticed Riina's well-preparedness. She had brought along all the necessary books and items required for her studies, which prompted Esmeralda to comment on her apparent dedication and passion for learning. This praise made Riina blush slightly, but she felt a surge of pride. Despite the less-than-ideal circumstances that had brought her to the academy, Riina was determined to prove her worth. After all, she was a former graduate student with much to offer, and she intended to showcase her true potential. Esmeralda continued to shower Riina with praises, particularly highlighting her enthusiasm for academics. Riina found herself basking in this attention, feeling increasingly confident about her decision to attend the academy. Just as their conversation was becoming more engaging, the door opened, and Miss Potts, the teacher, walked in. She commanded the room's attention immediately, asking everyone to settle down as she was about to begin the class on Imperial History. Miss Potts then announced that, being the first day, she would administer a simple test to gauge everyone's knowledge. This announcement sent a wave of worry through Riina, as she knew next to nothing about the Empire's history. Miss Potts elaborated that she would call on each student individually to answer a question. As Riina listened, her mind drifted back to her childhood memories. She recalled the times she had attempted to read history books, only to have the Duchess discard them in favor of romantic novels. The Duchess had never pressured her to study anything she didn't like, a luxury Riina now regretted, given her current predicament. The first question was directed at Riina, asking her to state the year the Empire was founded. Riina realized it was a straightforward question and suspected that Miss Potts had received a letter from the Duke, similar to the principal. Confidently, she answered that the year was 1392. However, this answer was incorrect. Esmeralda's worry was palpable, but Miss Potts skillfully turned the situation around, making Riina's answer seem valid. She explained that while the Empire was officially founded in 1786, a significant event indeed occurred in 1392, which made Riina's response quite reasonable. The classroom was left in stunned silence, impressed by the teacher's explanation. In the same classroom sat Ramira, who didn't hesitate to challenge Miss Potts. She pointed out that there couldn't have been a significant event in 1392 if it was before the Empire's founding. Ramira clearly had no intention of letting Riina off easily. Miss Potts acknowledged Ramira's sharp observation but decided to prioritize the Duke's influence. She explained that 1392 was the year when the first emperor, His Majesty and sisters, was born, and without him, there wouldn't be an empire. This explanation left everyone in the classroom amazed and bewildered. Feeling the weight of the day, Riina already wanted to go home. After some time, all the young ladies were gathered outside on the grounds where Madame Janov, their life mentor, awaited them. Madame Janov addressed the group, explaining that they were there to prepare for the upcoming charity party. She inquired if anyone was willing to volunteer for the position of team leader. Without hesitation, Riina raised her hand, sparking a flurry of whispers among the other students. They noted that Lady Riina didn't typically enjoy parties, yet they acknowledged that when it came to hosting, wealth was the most crucial factor, and Riina certainly had plenty of it. Riina had her reasons for volunteering. She was determined to gradually build her influence and ensure that Heath could become the crown prince. Madame Janov then asked if anyone else wanted to volunteer. This time, Ramira raised her hand, pledging to invest generously to lead the charity party to success. In the end, it was decided that both Riina and Ramira would host the party together. This arrangement sparked much anticipation among their peers, who looked forward to a great event from both young ladies. Later that night, Killian found himself in Riene's room, trying to understand what was troubling his sister. Riene felt a twinge of guilt for allowing her younger brother to stay out overnight, so she had eventually permitted him to stay in her room. Despite this, she kept urging Killian to return home. Killian, however, insisted that he should be by his sister's side during her difficult times. As Riene combed her hair, Killian took the comb from her and offered to do it for her. Riene was puzzled by his actions, unsure of what was going through his mind. Killian mentioned that the act reminded him of their childhood, making Riene realize that despite the changes and the boundaries now between them, she was still his sister in his memories. Killian asked again what was bothering her. Riene explained that she had become the team leader of the charity party team and had to choose the team members the next day. She was anxious about whether she could select the people she wanted. Killian offered his help, but Riene was unsure how he could assist her. Killian, with a determined look in his eyes, reassured her that he could do anything for her, no matter what it took. This reassurance gave Riene a small measure of comfort, knowing that her brother was willing to support her in any way possible. Today was a highly anticipated day, as each team leader would select the members who would assist them in preparing for the grand party. This annual event always turned into a spirited challenge between the two leaders, Riene and Ramira. The selection process was quite unique, with the team members being chosen through a rock-paper-scissors challenge between the team leaders. This method was regarded as completely fair, with no room for manipulation, ensuring that both leaders had an equal chance of assembling their ideal teams. The rules were simple. The winning leader would pick one person at a time. The challenge began, and the tension in the air was palpable. In the first round, Lady Riene emerged victorious. She was visibly elated to win the initial round, and she chose Esmeralda, who beamed with happiness at being selected. Esmeralda was equally thrilled to join Riene's team, feeling honored and excited. Ramira, on the other hand, was visibly frustrated. She had been unable to predict Riene's moves and felt annoyed by her own failure. As the challenge continued, Ramira won the second round. She chose Count Andover's daughter, which did not come as a surprise to anyone. The Andover family had recently come into a significant fortune through their business ventures, and it was clear that Lady Ramira was prioritizing wealth over her usual friendships. Riene silently observed Ramira's choice, thinking how shameless Ramira was to be so easily swayed by money. The rock-paper-scissors challenge continued with mounting excitement. In the subsequent rounds, Ramira's luck held, and she won again. Riene, who had only won the first round, lost the last two rounds to Ramira. Despite this, Riene congratulated her rival with a gracious smile. However, in reality, Lady Ramira had no idea that Riene had intentionally won only the first round and then deliberately lost the others. Riene had anticipated that Lady Ramira would prioritize selecting girls from wealthy families. For her own plans, Riene needed young ladies from either small families or rural areas. She understood that if she kept winning and only picked girls with weaker social positions, it might raise suspicion. Thus, it was part of Riene's strategy to lose intentionally. The previous night, when Killian offered his help to Riene, he mentioned that he could read minds. This revelation worried Riene, as she feared that Killian knew everything about her inner thoughts and plans. Fortunately, Killian was only joking. Despite the scare, Riene appreciated Killian's sharp foresight. He had an uncanny ability to understand what Lady Ramira would choose, even from the slightest movements. Standing discreetly behind a tree, Killian indicated to Riene the next hand Ramira was likely to play. This assistance proved invaluable to Riene's plan. As the challenge drew to a close, it was time for Ramira to choose the final member for her team. Everyone expected her to pick her best friend, Douglas's daughter. However, to everyone's surprise, Ramira chose Myrna's daughter instead. The decision left everyone confused and shocked, as it deviated from the expected norm. After the selections, Riene gathered everyone around a meeting table. She expressed her gratitude for the opportunity to plan the party together with such a diverse group. Riene promised to do her utmost to ensure a successful event. She also informed everyone that the real party preparations would commence the following day, and instructed everyone to meet in front of the main gate after their classes. Meanwhile, Ramira was engaged in a private conversation with Lady Douglas. Ramira was adamant that the charity party needed to be a resounding success. Lady Douglas, however, was unhappy with Ramira's decision not to choose her. Ramira explained that it was part of her strategy to send Lady Douglas to Riene's team to act as a spy and report back on Riene's preparations. Ramira had no intention of allowing a commoner to plan a flawless party without knowing every detail of her steps. In exchange for her espionage efforts, Ramira promised Lady Douglas that if she performed this task perfectly, she would introduce her to a respectable gentleman who was friends with her fiancé. Lady Douglas accepted the deal and vowed to do her best. Unbeknownst to them, Killian was perched above them on a branch, listening intently to every word of their conversation. Meanwhile, in a carriage, Riene's team was en route to an unknown destination. The roads were rough, and the path ahead seemed intimidating. Everyone was anxious and kept questioning if they were on the right track. However, Riena reassured them repeatedly, urging them to relax as they were close to their destination. After a few more minutes, they arrived and Riena asked everyone to disembark from the carriage. The team members were stunned when they saw the venue. It was St. Margaret's House Orphanage. Riena warmly introduced everyone to the venue for their highly anticipated charity event, St. Margaret House Nursery. The nursery was a bright and lively place, filled with the cheerful sounds of children playing and engaging in various educational activities. The vibrant atmosphere was truly captivating. After a while, the volunteers were seen mingling with the children, fully immersed in the joy of teaching. Some of the volunteers took on the task of instructing the students on how to properly hold a pen, ensuring that they had a good grip and proper posture. Others patiently guided the children on how to write their own names, focusing on letter formation and careful penmanship. The environment resembled that of a classroom, with everyone dedicated to imparting valuable literacy skills to the children, especially the orphans, helping them learn how to read and write. Douglas observed the scene from a distance, his curiosity piqued by the unfolding events. He approached Riena, inquiring about her goals for the charity event. Riena took a moment to explain that this initiative was grounded in the principle of noblesse oblige, a fundamental lesson she had learned at the academy. She elaborated that the purpose of the charity event was to translate this lesson into actionable practice, showing that even those from privileged backgrounds had a responsibility to contribute positively to society. Riena then made an announcement that she would be assuming the role of a temporary teacher, dedicating her time to instructing the children at the nursery. As the event progressed, a young girl called out to Douglas, seeking his opinion on whether she had written something correctly. The little girl, with hopeful eyes, extended her work towards him. However, Douglas's reaction was unexpectedly harsh. He abruptly slapped her hand away and began shouting at her. His outburst was both severe and uncalled for. Riena, witnessing the distressing scene, quickly intervened. She rushed over to Douglas, firmly grabbing his hand and instructing him to leave the room immediately, stating that he was unqualified to be a teacher. Douglas, visibly angered, retorted that he had intended to leave anyway, expressing his disdain for lowering himself to teach what he considered to be beggars. Riena, undeterred by his hostility, led him out of the classroom and gave him clear instructions to either remain in the carriage or stand outside the door. She made it unequivocally clear that he was not to re-enter the classroom. With a resolute gesture, Riena shut the door firmly behind him, making her stance unmistakable. Later, Riena sat beside the student who had been reprimanded by Douglas and offered a heartfelt apology to the little girl. The girl, named Anna, responded with a brave smile, reassuring Riena that it was all right and mentioning that she was accustomed to being called names. This innocent comment tugged at Riena's heartstrings. Determined to uplift Anna's spirits, Riena leaned in and shared a playful secret. Teacher Douglas hadn't bathed for months. Anna, skeptical, argued that the teacher didn't appear unkempt. Riena explained that Douglas's use of strong perfume masked the odor, but if someone got too close, the unpleasant smell would become noticeable. Anna listened with curiosity. The other ladies present, who had been eavesdropping on Riena's story, chuckled at her imaginative tale. Anna, intrigued, asked why teacher Douglas didn't bathe. Riena concocted a whimsical story, explaining that Douglas had once fallen into the water and had since developed an extreme aversion to it, to the point where he couldn't tolerate having water touch his body. Anna listened intently, her eyes wide with fascination at the inventive explanation. Riena reassured Anna, telling her not to be disheartened. Despite the playful story, Anna still felt a pang of sympathy for Douglas. As the class concluded, everyone felt rejuvenated and invigorated. The ladies discussed how much more enjoyable and fulfilling the day had been compared to their initial expectations, eagerly sharing their experiences and observations. Riena reflected on how well everyone had performed, surpassing her initial hopes. She thought back to her previous life as a teacher and realized she had unconsciously mirrored her former mentor's teaching style, with the notable exception of Douglas. Impressed by the group's dedication and efforts, Rena decided to reward them for their hard work. She distributed small gifts, beautiful brooches, to everyone except Douglas. One of the ladies, admiring her gift, inquired whether it was truly made of diamonds, while Douglas looked on with envy. After the gift-giving, Rena praised the group for their excellent work and informed them that they would reconvene next week in front of the main gate of the daycare center. As the ladies prepared to head home, Douglas was also getting ready to leave. Eliza and Rena observed him from a distance. Eliza, sensing that Douglas was up to something dubious, expressed a desire to follow him, but Rena advised her to stay calm and suggested it wasn't worth worrying about. Douglas proceeded straight to Ramira, recounting the day's events in detail. He also revealed Rene's upcoming plans. Ramira, with a scheming expression, instructed Douglas to create a significant disruption next time, one large enough to get himself banned from the daycare center. She believed that such an incident would thwart Rene's plans and provide Douglas with a sense of vindication. Later, Eliza was seen standing vigil outside Rene's room. Noticing something suspicious, she grabbed a small sword, prepared to defend if necessary. However, she soon realized that the person entering the room was Killian. Eliza, surprised and somewhat on edge, asked Killian what he was doing in the princess's room, accusing him of taking advantage of the absence of its owner. Killian, unfazed by her confrontation, reassured Eliza to relax. He explained that his sister had permitted him to stay in the room since he was currently without a home. He also reminded Eliza of his position as the heir of the family she served, which brought a touch of humility to her demeanor. Killian's purpose for being there was more pressing. He had observed that the noble ladies were conspiring to create trouble for Rene. Hearing this, Eliza's anger flared, and she demanded to know the identities of the culprits. Killian, weary of the constant scheming, assured her that he would manage the situation and requested her assistance with a different matter altogether. The next morning, Eliza was found sitting in the carriage alongside Rene. Despite being explicitly instructed not to follow her everywhere, Eliza remained insistent on protecting Rene. She believed it was her duty to be by Rene's side at all times. Eliza explained to Rena that she should have been with her from the very beginning, as her primary role was to ensure Rene's safety. Realizing that Eliza was already there, Rena decided it would be beneficial if Eliza could teach the children something valuable. Eliza confidently declared that she possessed a variety of useful skills, such as the ability to clean broken bones, reassemble them, paralyze someone with just 2 fingers, and perform numerous other techniques. The other ladies in the carriage, upon hearing this, were visibly frightened by Eliza's formidable capabilities. As soon as the class for the orphan children commenced, Anna approached Douglas. Rene, observing this interaction, discreetly signaled Eliza, who swiftly moved towards Douglas and placed her hand over Douglas's mouth to prevent any potential disturbance. Rena also took her place beside Eliza. Anna was holding a bottle of water, which she intended to give to Douglas. Her pure intention was to help Douglas overcome her fear of water. Douglas, however, initially perceived the gift as insignificant and thought it was a trivial gesture. To ensure Anna did not feel hurt, Rena reassured her that Douglas viewed the bottle as a very precious gift and was genuinely grateful for it. Anna further explained that she had learned the previous day that Douglas had been unable to see for several months due to her fear of water, which made her very sad. Douglas, wanting to object, found herself unable to do so due to Eliza's watchful presence. Rena then praised Anna for being the first to show care towards Douglas, noting that everyone else had been avoiding her. She also mentioned that Douglas had no friends. Hearing this, Anna felt deeply saddened and took Douglas's hand in a gesture of friendship, promising to be her friend from that day forward. From then on, Anna stayed by Douglas's side every moment. She brought her water, attended to the garden by watering the flowers, and even brought juice for Douglas. Anna thoroughly enjoyed her time with Douglas and found great satisfaction in being with her. Douglas, under the watchful eye of Eliza, was unable to react negatively to Anna's kindness. When it was time for Anna to leave, she expressed that she had a wonderful time and was delighted to be friends with Douglas. She assured Douglas that even if she were unable to see for 100 years, she would never avoid her, and encouraged her to return next time. As Douglas exited the room, Rena handed her a brooch and kindly asked her to take care in the upcoming week. Meanwhile, in her own room, Esmeralda was confronted by her mother, who questioned her about why she was not hosting the charity party. Esmeralda apologized for the oversight, but her mother was not merely seeking an apology. Her mother emphasized that while it was one thing for the princess to hold the position, having it taken by Lady Ramira was unacceptable. She inquired about Esmeralda's thought process during this critical time, when it was crucial to solidify her social standing. Esmeralda explained that she believed it would be more advantageous to assist the princess closely. Her mother cautioned her not to become overly involved in her friendship with the princess. Esmeralda's mother then held her face firmly and asked if the prince had ever replied to the letter she had sent. Her mother advised her not to rely solely on incomplete spells, as there needed to be a basic attraction for the spell to be effective. She instructed Esmeralda to make a strong and lasting impression on the Duke and Duchess at the charity party. Later, all the ladies in Riene's team were informed that their charity party would also serve as a venue for the children's presentations. This event would provide the children with an opportunity to gain new experiences, build confidence, and contribute to raising funds for constructing a school. The ladies agreed that, since they were currently conducting classes temporarily, it would be even more beneficial if the children could attend a formal school. The children were thrilled at the prospect of making presentations. Riena inquired if Anna would be participating, but Anna, lacking confidence, expressed doubt about her ability to give a good presentation. To Anna's surprise, Douglas encouraged her, convincing her that she was capable of delivering a successful presentation. This encouragement boosted Anna's confidence, and she decided that she would definitely participate. Later, Lady Douglas was approached by someone who thanked her for taking excellent care of Anna. It was revealed that Anna had suffered trauma due to being neglected and bullied by relatives after the death of her parents. Even after arriving at the orphanage, Anna had compulsively tried to clean herself, believing she was dirty. However, her time with Lady Douglas seemed to have helped her overcome her trauma completely. Finally, the day of the charity party arrived. Ramira approached Lady Douglas and inquired if the child was expected to attend the event that day. As the charity party looms on the horizon, the stakes have never been higher for Riena and her team. With Anna's newfound confidence and Douglas's surprising influence, how will their presentations impact the event? And what unexpected twists await as Ramira makes her move? Stay tuned for the next chapter to uncover the answers.